Hello everybody, how are we doing today? It's me, Dan, moderately anonymous MTG, and we are here, unfortunately, today to talk about one of my least favorite things in cEDH, and that is cheating in cEDH tournaments. So over the weekend we had another Chaos tournament, and unfortunately 2 cheaters were found, and unfortunately this just really isn't a surprising fact. We've seen a lot of cheaters be caught over the last year or so, and cheating is just an inevitable part of the cEDH tournament scene, especially in online cEDH tournaments which are remote and where people are playing from their own homes. Now, obviously, this is super detrimental to the tournament scene. We want to have confidence in these tournaments. We want to see the best players want to play in them. And especially for these tournaments that have real prizes on the line, we want to see these competitions go to players who actually earn them. While online tournaments are more susceptible to cheating, importantly, they're really also super accessible ways for people to compete. Allowing people to play from their own home allows people with different mental and physical barriers to compete, which is a great thing. It broadens the horizons of what cEDH can be and who's allowed to play in these tournaments. And ultimately, I think these online tournaments open up the accessibility and the diversity that cEDH is going to have overall. We're never going to be worse off for having more people play with more ideas. So while the online tournament scene isn't perfect, I think it is something that is really good ultimately for the meta and something that we should continue to perfect. So first off, let's just talk about some of the different forms that cheating can take. The first and one of the most obvious is just having an illegal deck. That can mean having multiple copies of your best card in your deck, or it can mean having a deck that is either too large or too small for the legal amount. While deck lists need to be submitted before tournaments are started, they are not checked before each round, so this is one of the ways that we're really susceptible to cheating. Another is marked cards, and this becomes especially true for players who either have a poor internet connection or a poor lighting around their board display. The harder it is to see cards on a playmat, the harder it's going to be to notice that the sleeves are marked or maybe the cards are marked or something like that. One of the oldest forms of cheating in Magic is mana weaving. That is weaving lands into your deck into different intervals to make sure that you're never flooding or getting mana screwed. But again, this is not the only way that you can shuffle to cheat. There are tons of different videos all over the internet that can show you different ways to shuffle to make sure that you're getting specific cards to the top to do magic tricks, etc., or in this case, cheat in a Magic tournament. Players getting exiled from spell table or losing their connection to the tournament is obviously one of the most unique ways that online play is susceptible to cheating. Unfortunately, blackouts and disconnects are one of the places where we're just never going to know what's going on there. Players can be grabbing cards off the side of their screen, they can be reshuffling their deck. There's just a lot of different ways that can be taken advantage of there, and that's just one of the ways that we're really open to it. This last one is not unique to online gameplay, but it is something that we have to think about, even though there are more opponents to catch it, and that is just players that are trying to use your imperfect memory against you. This can take a ton of different forms, and I think one of the most infamous forms of this is the 2 Explorers incident. There are a lot of different ways that people can either act or speak very quickly to try to get you to slip up and make sure that you're not thinking as fast as they're acting. So if you catch those quick talkers and quick actors, make sure that's something that you're keeping your eye on.
What turn is it?
2 Explorers.
These are just some of the most common ways to cheat, but it's far from an exhaustive list of all of them. But thankfully, the tournament scene has taken a lot of strides forwards in ways that we can help protect against these cheats, which includes a time limit for how long players can be disconnected before they get yeeted from the tournament, and also things like including a player's lap and their surrounding desk area in their display on their game board, which can stop people from bringing in different cards or otherwise using some sort of shuffling cheat, bring cards from their lap to their hand, etc. And these are obviously imperfect solutions, but they're very helpful ones at the very least. So with that being said, let's talk about things that you can do as an individual player to stop cheating and prevent cheating in tournaments. The first is just like the tweet from Comedian said, record your games. This is something you want to do as a tournament player anyway. You want to review all of your footage. That is how you're going to become a better Magic player, by watching the mistakes that you make, seeing different openings and how you could have played games differently. But especially because you also want to catch cheaters, you really want to review these gameplay videos. Friend of content creators everywhere, still Steve Man, and friend of my heart, is a great One Piece player and was also involved in catching a cheater in a One Piece tournament, and he only was able to do it because he had footage of the games and was able to look back at it, and he actually found a secondary cheat that he didn't even catch the first time in the game.
See right here? Watch his deck, watch his deck. Oop. Oh. Wait a second. No f***ing way. I mean, not that this does anything. This was actually actively bad for him. So sorry I didn't catch that, buddy. So he accidentally knocks the Bro, what? I thought he knocked the top card of his deck. You know, I guess as much as he thought, he knocked the top card of his deck into his lap, so he put it back there. But he actually knocks the Moby Dick out of his graveyard onto his lap, and then he puts that on top of his deck. Bro, what?
I recognize that going back and watching hours of footage that you just lived through is a lot to do, but it's not only going to make you a better player, it's going to make our tournament scene better because this is what's going to allow you to catch those cheats in real time. It's really hard to divert your attention between 3 different opponents and what you're doing and playing a clean game. There's always going to be things that you miss during a game, but if you have that footage to go back and watch, you're going to be able to catch this stuff. The next tip I have is keeping a clear board state, and this means for you and for your opponent. You want to give your opponents a standard of clarity to match. This means things like having a well-lit board, telling people where your cards are, clearly displaying how many cards you have in your hand when you put it down on the table, and this allows you to ask your opponents to do the same. Don't allow your opponents to obfuscate the game state by stacking cards or not properly lighting their boards. This is an extremely small ask when there are real prizes on the line. And this also means keeping track of publicly known zones. Asking players for how many cards they have in their hand or the number of cards in their graveyards and the specific contents. Keeping track of known information closely is going to stop your opponents from being able to take advantage of the table. You're going to know if they slipped an extra card into their graveyard or their hand if you've been keeping track of it the whole game. And the last piece of advice is one of the most important ones, and that is don't be afraid to call a judge. Judges are there for a reason, and they're there to be called when you need information on what's going on in the game. Judges are there to make sure that the game is being played correctly and to make sure that you know what is going on at all times. The more you get used to regularly calling a judge, the easier it's going to be to do when you think something fishy is going on. You want to know the kind of information you need to relay to a judge to get across the board state accurately, and you want to know what kind of information they need to be able to help you through the situation. The more eyes you put on a game, the less likely you are to encounter cheating. Again, these are all imperfect solutions to a really unfortunate problem in cEDH, and there's no way to protect ourselves from cheating entirely. Online gameplay is just always going to be susceptible to certain forms of cheating that can't be solved by keeping games remote. The integrity of these tournaments are in danger, but I think the benefits of remote gameplay and remote tournament play are huge to both the cEDH meta and to individual players who get to play in them. I really want to see these tournaments continue because I think they're a huge revolution in how we think about cEDH and what we think about cEDH decks. But if we're doing this at the cost of losing the faith of people like Comedian, it's really not worth doing. So that's why it's really important to keep cheating out of these tournaments and know how you can protect yourself from it. So I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please share it, like, comment, and subscribe. That's all super helpful. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time, everybody.